Hello.
So, all right, hit me up.
Oh, okay. I just need to pause stream for a second because, wow, people are right. The delay factor is weird. Hi,
Yeah.
chat. So I am
Name and pronouns.
obviously. Oh, yeah, right. So, hi, guys. It's Jason here from chat. I use he, him. I'm a trans guy, something that Vaush doesn't have much on the stream. So, I guess, you're getting pull points for that, I guess.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for boosting my cred.
Yeah, no, happy to do so. Um, but so for me, I recently had an interesting conversation with some people close to me. I don't want to bring up relation, obviously. I just feel like that would be a bit too personal about certain implementation of stuff. So, for example, there was some stuff implemented in terms of transportation where a bunch of parking spaces were taken out that were needed for bus stuff, which made me think, well, okay, that means that we need to do transportation policy kind of in an all at once thing. And that made sense to me. But what confused me was how would one practically implement parental leave for, say, a 6-month period, which I ideally want, except also be able to have people fill those roles in, for example, like a small business or something that only has people.
I could be wrong on this, but I think generally in Europe, it's like a temp worker kind of thing. If it's like a really small business where it's not situated such that people can fill in for the work for that time, it's usually like they bring in temp workers to compensate for that in the meantime. There are problems with that too, of course, right? Because temp workers are usually subject to a lot of exploitation. I think it's one of those acceptable evil type deals, you know?
Yeah.
I think most workplaces should also have a redundant number of workers, I think, you know? I feel like because the problem is over employing people is rarely the problem, you know? Usually it's too few people are doing too much work, and you know, generally having enough leeway that people being gone for a while is something that can be dealt with is probably a beneficial business attitude to enforce anyway, you know?
I understand that. It was concerning to me in this specific example because I know some doctors who have a small practice, and I understand that ideally I would want the health care system to be decommodified so that this wouldn't be as big of an issue. This would be government would be able to actually fill in, and so there's going to be a lot more leeway there. It's just right now, if you have 3 doctors owning a practice, they have 2 nurses. One of those nurses decides to have a kid. I mean, having a nurse that works there, training, stuff like that, making sure that everything works is just, it seems like a difficult situation to have implemented.
For paid leave specifically, right? Because for unpaid leave, you could always just go okay, you know, unpaid leave's pretty easy, right? You just hire another person, and you know, you put in some time beforehand. Because usually people know when they're about to, what the fuck? Oh, sorry. Usually
No,
people know when they're gonna need parental leave soon, right? Usually there's some forewarning there.
Well, yeah, some. I would assume. I think people would notice. It seems like something that would be
I hope people know, you know, ideally. I think the point you're hitting on, though, is correct in that it can be really difficult to implement progressive policies piecemeal. It feels like kind of an all-or-nothing thing. In this case, I feel like the best thing you could do in a transitory sense, you know, is a tax rebate, or even the government subsidizing, where it's if you have somebody who's on paid parental leave or whatever, then the government will give you enough money to pay for a replacement as well. Something like that, you know?
Yeah. Okay. That would make a lot of sense, and I can see how that would work. My concern then for the contract worker would be, what does that person do after they've if you're learning a specific system for a period of 6 months, right? Then what does that person then go on to do? You know?
That seems like an unsolvable problem in the purview of this conversation, as long as we're working within the system we already live in, you know? If we could make more significant alterations to the system, we could address that, but the problems with temp work are pretty significant and pretty far-reaching. So it seems like that would require a very radical attempt at problem solving, I think.
Okay. Yeah,
not to say it's not worth addressing, of course, but you know.
Oh yeah, no, I think the best way that you could, well, obviously these people, if you're doing highly specialized stuff like specific like medical technology or something like specific like coding or whatever, it would obviously have to be something that be you can't do the old adage of a writer one day, a fisherman the next. But I think, yeah, I hear what you're saying there, that it would have to be a more, I don't know, flexible system in order to allow.
For sure. Well, do you? I mean, so it's just that, like, how to implement that. That's the main thing you were concerned about.
It was that, and then there was something that's been bugging me also that I just wanted to pick your brain about. So, I've been having some conversations with people in my life about this kind of stuff, just trying to say, hey, I think people should be able to have these things. And generally, like, I get people agreeing. They're just like, how would you do that, though? And then they bring up these things, and they're concerning to me, and I couldn't necessarily see a way out that would work, and that's why I wanted to ask you. I'm sorry. I'm very nervous.
You don't need to be nervous talking to me. You talk to me plenty from chat.
Well, yeah, but I don't know.
It's the same to me.
Okay, fair. But, so, the thing that worried me was one of the people that I was talking to brought up the idea of, oh, well, they can do these, walkable city things and all this urban development stuff over in Scandinavia because of cultural cohesion. And I understand that that's generally a dog whistle, obviously, for, oh, it's all white people, tends to what they bring up. And thank you, Chad, for providing Pepe's to help me with that general argument. But I don't think that part is true prescriptively about America. I think it's partially true descriptively because, like, I have relatives from the fucking South. I am nothing like them. We don't share the same goals or values. And I don't know how to talk to these people.
Well, I think cultural cohesion is necessary in this respect, but only on the issue at hand. So the cultural cohesion that's necessary is the people in the country have to have a shared belief that it is possible to use public spending to meaningfully benefit their lives, to employ it in a way to build better infrastructure, to have a welfare state, stuff like that. If people can get on board with that general position, the rest of the political disagreements, I think, are meaningless in the context of these particular problems. So that is something Americans don't agree on. That's something we'll have to fight for. But it's not, as you've said, prescriptively true. This is something that people can be moved over to, thank God,
Yeah, I can understand that. It does, yeah, I think the greatest strength of America and the greatest weakness in this respect is that we are a melting pot, which, as long as you have certain foundations, definitely works.
Well, if you want to, I assume the arguments that you're having on this particular subject are largely with conservatives.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, can I make a couple of suggestions for talking points?
Absolutely. Please debate coach me.
So there are a couple of things that you can do here to significantly improve the arguments you'd employ for stuff like better social development, like the kind of shit I talk about, like public works and all that, in ways that are interesting to a conservative. So first one is that this is an element where the conservatives and libertarians are actually right. A lot of the construction regulation in America is incredibly unnecessary and filled with red tape, or yellow tape? Bureaucracy. For example, building codes in, I think, New York are, like, legendarily bad. And by bad, I don't mean, like, oh, they spend too much money protecting people. What I mean is that there's this incredibly complex and archaic hierarchy of public officials that have to sign off on almost anything that's done, and they get way too much time to do it. Zoning codes, construction codes, all this, and it's like a bureaucratic nightmare to do anything, no matter how obvious, easy, simple, useful, or, like, worthwhile. So lessen government bureaucracy, cut down on those unnecessary laws, look at them and decide, like, hey, this is fucking with our ability to build a better country. Zoning laws are the same. Why the fuck is the government allowed to make it illegal to build apartments in a given area? Like, how fucked up is that? Like, private industry wants to build like multi-story family housing in an area, and the government's like, nah, sorry, it's all like single family housing in this suburb, you know, even though the free market would indicate that other people want other types of things. So you can hit on that, like free market arguments, and all this is true. I believe all this. Additionally, conservatives often hearken to the value of community, you know, of not living like isolated bugmen lives or whatever. There is great civic demand for the types of developments that, like, say, Europeans get, like town squares, city squares, cool shit like that. But we don't get it because it's against a lot of, like, construction and zoning codes. These are things that you can do, like protest your government. Like, hey, let us have a fucking town square. What the fuck is wrong with you? Like, why do you build everything out like this, you know? I think there are ways to frame these things because these are all really closely adjacent to, like, libertarian economic arguments and conservative political arguments.
Right. Yeah, the best way to phrase that would obviously be a big government is taking on this part of your freedom, making it difficult for this to happen, depending on the context of the conversation, obviously. But harping on the this is something that people are taking from you tends to work well with conservatives because the fear factor there.
Yeah, return to tradition and all that.
Yeah, return to tradition of having a very high income tax rate. You know, like let's go back to that. Have fun.
Yeah. And obviously, of course, you know, I mean, much has been said about how conservatives can potentially be wooed over with arguments about how, you know, bloated the fucking, what do you call it, the military budget is, you know, like the tax dollars being wasted, blah, blah, blah. But there are extensions of that argument that I think they tend to be fairly receptive to. Not with the military specifically, but, like, you know, oh, here's a big one for the free market types, you know? One of, another reason why construction tends to be so bad in America is because the government loves no-bid contracting, you know? If you're a construction company in America, odds are there is, like, some city government somewhere that's like, yeah, okay, we need construction done, you guys are going to do it, here's a very loose timetable, and here's a blank check, just get it done, and everyone sits on their ass and nothing gets done. Like, that's why, like, every major city in America is full of construction sites that just sit there for years. Like, sometimes you don't even see people working on them for, like, months and months. It's crazy.
Anecdotally, I know this is obviously an anecdote, but I have an uncle who was once actually the director of, like, parking and transportation in a pretty large city in Connecticut. But point being, he would try to get things done, like actually adding in two-way roads, which for some apparent reason, in literally all of New England, it's mostly one way. He would try to add these things in. He'd try to make sure that buses were actually happening. He'd try to make sure that people had access to parking and everything. And it would always be, he wouldn't be able to do it because the steps that he would need to take would need to be approved by a certain superior to his superior that would then need to be sent back down to somebody below him. It would just be so many different people who had to confirm all of these things that none of them would do it because they wanted him to do something that he couldn't do in the first place.
Yeah, it sucks shit.
They did the thing for him.
It's horrible.
Yeah, no, it was shit. It's horrible. And I absolutely agree with that. It's just, these things are, it's so, you say this a lot and you're kind of like, why are the people who want to call America number one okay when America is like the 99th on the list or something along those lines? And you're right. It's like, it's shit, but still my freedom or whatever, you know?
Oh, yeah, 100%. I really just think it's about framing these arguments in the way that best conforms to the emotional biases of the people who you're talking to, you know?
Yeah. I think, yeah. There is one last meme that I would like to ask you about.
Kill me.
And it was, what was it? I'm sorry.
Fuck
for me,
me up,
it's 2:30 a.m. for me. My brain is working on overdrive. I'm so sorry.
No worries.
But it was generally about specifically how, if we were to have like UBI and such, obviously we'd want to pay people who weren't working. And for me, this is because we literally all benefit from everything that every other human has done before us and does around us. So to me, this is like, people should be entitled to basic stuff. How could, I can't seem to break through this feeling that a lot of my conservative family members and some friends, but not many, have around this idea.
About the validity of UBI?
About the validity of people just basically like deserving just basic things, not UBI, but more essentially, like, I think that people are entitled to like food, shelter, water, probably an internet connection, if we can try and convince people of this, you know.
So I think the problem is that a lot of people are very historically locked when it comes to stuff like this, okay? So there are some rights that people will agree to, you know, even conservatives tend to. Like, for example, the right to, like, clean drinking water, most conservatives will, like, concede that. Like, okay, we should, like, make sure everyone has this, you know? There are some basic things. The idea is they don't like unearned advantages. They don't like the idea of, you know, people getting what they don't deserve.
Entitlement, yeah.
Right. Now, the problem is, of course, that where we draw that line is really arbitrary. What does a human being do to deserve clean drinking water? Like, obviously, I think it's something we don't need to deserve. We should just get it. But for a lot of people, if deserving it is some fundamental thing that has to be justified, you know, I don't think we deserve clean drinking water any more than we deserve UBI or welfare or whatever else. So pointing out the arbitrarity of that distinction, and if people are not even willing to make the, you know, clean drinking water argument, like, okay, what about access to, like, running water and sewage at all, you know? What about building codes? Like, most conservatives have a line on this, like fundamentally, you know, like, okay, well, do you think your child should be born into, like, some, like, fucking, like, mud hut out in, like, Syria, where, like, some desolate refugee has carved out something approximating a life? Like, come on. Like, obviously, the whole point of civilization is that people are born with some advantages over people who aren't in civilization. That's what we do everything for. Like, without literacy, we wouldn't even have the tools necessary to do the things that allow us to later deserve the things they claim we need to fight for. So it's a stupid argument for them to make if they believe it's not arbitrary. But you can take that line, right? And then you talk about, you know, historical context. What is a person entitled to? Well, we understand this line's kind of arbitrary already. I don't really think the question should be what are we entitled to. It's how good of a life can we provide everyone by default without them needing to do anything, you know, like what's the starting ground? And for that, you have to think about, you know, what we've been provided historically and where that came from. See, it used to be that the standard of living, just the default expectation of a good life, was much lower for people. And that wasn't because people were any morally different back then. Let's say 1800. It's not like the average person in 1800 was less deserving of default life benefits then than people are now. That would be kind of silly. We're all people. I mean, it's when we're born, right? Like, the time period shouldn't matter. The difference was, what could we provide them? And the question there is, well, okay, what level of industrial efficiency allows us now to do more than what we were able then to do for them? And then the question gets interesting, because now we're not talking about what people deserve. What we're really talking about is what we're capable of. And nowadays, through industrialization, through automation, it is an undeniable fact of the world that our productive systems are capable of maintaining a much higher standard you know, level of comfort than we ever could have dreamed of in the past. Or to put it another way, I'm terribly sorry for all of the speech, but, you know, to put it another way.
No, it's absolutely fine.
Let's imagine another world. Oh, big mosquitoes. Wow. Let's imagine another world. One in which there is exactly one owner of industry, you know? Monopolization, oligarchy, however it came to be, whatever, you know, you get the drill. Let's call
Not
him...
East Guy Anime Chat, god damn it.
Shmelon Schmusk, okay? Now,
okay.
Or how about Shmef Shmezos? I think that's maybe a bit more applicable here. So, Shmef Shmezos... Oh, sorry?
No, I was just saying, I see. Very interesting allegory you're bringing here.
Right, of course, you know, hypothetically. Now, let's say that through acquisition, monopoly, you know, legitimate business deals, no crime committed, Shmef Shmezos is the owner of the productive apparatus of the entire planet. Every physical need, every material that people need, every product we buy, every house we live in, all of it, constructed by him. Materials are mined by him. Not him himself, of course, but by an automated army. He owns machines. These machines, billions of them, all over the world, fulfill every human need. Now, in such a world, there is no need for human employment for anything other than service and artistic work. All mechanical needs are fulfilled by him. But in such a world, we can imagine that money as a concept would not be particularly useful because its production has been historically, levied as a way of giving the government something to tax. It's essentially a way for the government to manage internal production. They no longer need to do that. Everything's going to be produced anyway by this guy. So in such a world where there's no need for employment and no need for money, does the average person then starve? How exactly do they buy all the wondrous products being produced by this schmef-schmezos? The only sane answer, of course, is that they should be given a stipend, a provision through which they're able to meaningfully participate in the economy that this schmef-schmezos enables through his productive capacity. Because if you don't do that, nobody can buy any of this shit that he has his robots build. And while this is a very exaggerated hypothetical, it reveals a sort of an underlying truth, which is that at the end of the day, deserving is irrelevant. The ability for the average person to participate in the productive forces of the nation they live in is necessary. If they can't do that, everyone suffers, including them. Whether or not they deserve it is irrelevant. All that matters is, can we afford it? And the answer to that question is an objective yes. So we should, because it betters life for everyone. It gives people the ability to live more dignified lives, and it sets up and establishes and sort of protects an underlying system of economic security, which allows people to participate in the economy, which allows the economy to flow, which allows money to flow, which allows people to build, to create, to innovate, to entrepreneur. All these systems only function if people have enough to participate.
I see.
Sorry, that was a big old ramble, but at a fundamental level there, that's the reason why, because that goes beyond morality even, if the person you're talking to is very callous, you can ignore that. You can go straight to the society can only function if all these processes are available.
Yeah. Society fundamentally needs people there, otherwise it doesn't necessarily exist because we make society.
As many people as possible. As many people as possible. The only way around this is to be some kind of radical degrowth, anarcho-primitivist or whatever. But I promise you, industrialists want people wealthy enough to buy their products. Ford discovered this to an extent. The idea of paying your workers enough that they can afford to buy the products that you create is kind of a primitive version of what I'm talking about on a civilizational level.
Yeah. I have no idea why. I remember Basquiat calling that a myth. I looked it up afterwards. It seems like he understood that not necessarily that the workers would be able to buy the cars, but that the money would go back into the economy and the surrounding community and then permit more people to buy the cars. Yes.
In the broader sense, of course. The money may not go directly, but it's about fueling the economy to the point where these cycles, these modes of production are reinforced, of course. Because, oligarchs aren't capable of just seizing money on their own, not here, not in Russia. It's the systems that dictate the money people accumulate, its worth. That's very much a social force. And individual people as a group do have control over it. By individuals, I just mean regular people, like as a group, they have control over this to an extent, however indirectly. So if one were to circumvent these processes, I will simply be wealthy by having the money, not by acquiring it through transactions or by having people buy stuff for me, but simply by having it. Well, it's nonsensical. It just doesn't work that way.
Yeah. That does make a lot more sense. Thank you. Yeah. I think that would make a lot more sense, yeah.
Yeah, and you could just do that whole ramble with them and just hope they listen.
Yeah, just record yourself doing it, everybody, and then just play the voice memo and then leave the room. Hopefully, they'll figure it out.
Yeah, that is literally how my job works. So
Well, yeah, I guess it is, in a lot of different ways. I wanted to say that when you mention anarcho-primitivism, obviously, you don't want that. And to be fair, I think I've listened to that conversation with Demon Mom about 3 times, and I still don't know what the hell she was getting at. In the
I
end
understand.
part. Like,
Oh, sorry.
I'm just still so confused by that. I can imagine part of it, but at the end, it seemed like she was advocating for what you said she was, that she claimed was a strawman. So I just don't know.
I think,
I'm lost.
well, so I mean, you know, to give due grace where it's given, like Demon Mama has a pretty bad habit of rejecting accurate characterizations of her positions. So that's something that she tends to do anyway. But broadly, in terms of the arguments she has for that sort of thing, I don't think it's that she doesn't understand the argument, though in the context of that debate, I mean, I think she got a lot wrong. But if I were to steelman her positions and infer what she means and try to work out a workable system from that, I think the argument that she's making is that the centralized control of medicine production and distribution through any bureaucracy is going to create, through the necessary inequalities bureaucracies produce, more suffering and inequality than investigating more anarchic and decentralized methods could in the long term. Now, of course, the problem with this is that anarchic, decentralized penicillin production
Isn't good.
it's not great. It's not perfect.
It would end badly.
Yeah, but there's an underlying truth there, I think, an anti-hierarchical take that I find agreeable. I guess the issue with that is that you would have to do so much groundwork before you could implement something like that. Like there's so much underlying work you would need to do before a system like that would be acceptable. And what's more, in terms of centralized hierarchy and like bureaucracy, medicine has got to be one of the best reasons to have that.
Yeah, it's a bit important. A lot of the stuff around sort of the insurance requirements that goes around charting is not at all needed, but broadly, yes, a lot of the regulations we have around medicine are rather important. I think also another part of her argument would obviously be that based on the fact that she was saying, hey, make your chemist friend or be interested in this thing, I think that she was commenting on the fact that people might need access to the ability to explore their interest in chemistry more broadly, and that would sort of increase the number of people who could help produce these things, I think.
Yeah, well, there are definitely systems of gatekeeping behind education that could probably be streamlined a little bit, you know? Like, this is an instance where apprenticeship programs could actually probably be pretty beneficial, you know? Like, you know how in developing countries, every once in a while, like, NGOs will send over doctors and shit, and they'll be like, hey, here's some advanced equipment, and here's how to help a person if they're dying of malaria. Good luck, you know? If we had an attitude like that towards a broader range of, you know, assistive professions, a broader range of services, I feel like it could be really helpful, you know, to sort of break down the barriers of access. But obviously, again, this is a very careful, very long-term project, and it's not DIY at all. It would be very structured. Ideally, you know, at least that's how I would want it done.
Necessary checks and balances. The only thing that I think really disturbed me, well, besides the fact that at the end I think it did turn into a I don't know how to follow this, that was you can make HRT DIY. HRT stands for hormone replacement therapy, which includes testosterone. Don't make DIY testosterone, chat. Like, don't do it. It's not good. That one we can't bathtub. That one scared me a bit. So yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely oh, here, hold on. There we go. Sorry, the NPC is, I'm speed reading it very quickly.
No, totally fair. Sorry, I popped out of chat. A friend called me to bitch about something. I don't know.
Not at all. Yeah, no. It's just a how do I put it? Yeah, I mean, even like DIY anything, any DIY anything involves precursors, you know? Like, what people call DIY estrogen isn't really, you're buying the estrogen, you know? You're just doing some light synthesization to make it consumable in the form that makes titties grow. You can do DIY insulin from animals, but it's dangerous because there are animal proteins that connect to the insulin. The way we do it now is synthesizing it. You know, people don't have an appreciation for how complicated this shit is. I was doing some YouTubing before, and you know citric acid?
I'm aware of it broadly, yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, we used to get it from, like, grinding up lemons and limes and doing a bunch of chemical processes to it and shit, and it was never pure citric acid, and it was very time-consuming to make. It turns out there's a bacteria that, under very careful conditions, is capable of synthesizing it if it consumes the right materials. This is very much a laboratory process. It can't really be done just, like, at your home or whatever. But, like, stuff like that exists for basically every precursor, and there are tens of thousands of precursors. The number of potential compounds and chemicals out there is virtually infinite, and they need to be pure as well. You can't have, you know, if you're trying to make something that you're going to ingest as medicine, you can't have 98% pure what's it. There was that, this example was used in Breaking Bad, that chiral form of a chemical where it was supposed to help with nausea during pregnancy, but it ended up giving people cancer because it was a different chiral form, the same molecule, but with it flipped, basically. Like, okay, like, yeah, like this shit needs laboratory equipment. Like, this is way the fuck too much for us to.
Sounds, yeah. These things deeply affect people. There are certain medications that, if you make wrong, have very disastrous effects. And even if you do the wrong things while on them, have very disastrous effects. So, but I think the broader point of there are certain medicines that obviously I think could be backpubbed and not like actually patented, but more available to people with less knowledge of chemistry, and it would be less risky than obviously many other types. I think that's generally true, but
if that were to be done, for me, I think a good thing you could do would be decentralized medicine distribution, not so much production. I think in terms of making the form of medicine itself more acceptable, I think better medicinal education would be much better. Like, we take human biology classes, but, like, we learn about stuff that's not that useful. I feel like it could be better oriented towards stuff that is useful. Like, for example, you can probably find home remedies, workable home remedies. I don't mean, like, wives' tale stuff, but, like, legit, like, this works, you know, for a ton of ailments that a lot of people aren't familiar with. Stomach aches, headaches. Like, I feel like the average person should have a pretty good understanding of how the resources in their house can be employed to fix some ailments, you know? Like, but oftentimes it's just, like, buried in bullshit online. It's like, well, sometimes it's useful, but sometimes it's like an old wives' tale, or, you know, you never know what's true or not. But we could make the average person as educated on their own health and ways of addressing their health as, like, a medicine man hundreds of years ago. Or more so.
And I think that also probably would help bring sort of more, not necessarily modern medicine, obviously, but more cures and such to different cultures and such. In one of my classes last semester, yes, I'm 19 and I'm a sociology major. You've done something, you know. I didn't know sociology was actually a thing until I watched your channel, and then I realized, wait, hold on, this is the thing I'm really interested in. So
you're gonna make me cry. Don't.
So thank you. But, you know, one of the things that my professor talked about, who I've asked to be my academic advisor because she's very cool. Anyways, she brought up the topic of the fact that it's difficult in certain communities to promote traditional forms of medicine. The example given was that her brother was struggling with serious depression and executive dysfunction, and her parents, instead of going and saying, hey, we need to bring you to a psychiatrist to get this sorted out, in the Hispanic community, it's more common to say, no, you're coming back to the family house and we're going to take care of you and do all of these things. So, you know, there are methods that actually might be more approachable and could actually help more people if folks knew more about these things. I think.
I agree 100%. Yeah, there are definitely a lot of cultural biases. Like, for example, a big one over here in the States is, like, prayer healing, for example. Where our lunatic fucking white evangelicals will consign their children to oblivion with their fucking prayer candles and shit, you know? potential legislation against those dumb fucks aside, the more the average person knows about what they can do to heal their body, the better off everyone is. It should be like adjacent to, because it also reduces a lot of the burden on the healthcare system as well. If we really want to have universal healthcare, it's going to save us a lot of money if the average person isn't going to the doctor every time they get a cough. The more educated a person is on their health, the more actualized they are, the more confident they are in their well-being, the more able they are to address their problems quickly and effectively, the less anxious they are about any negative health experiences they're having. Like, the more they can maintain their health, because not nobody, but a lot of people, no matter how wealthy or how much free time they have, like, don't want to go to the doctor once a week if they tend to be, like, chronically ill. Maybe they can fix things up for themselves a little bit, make it a little bit easier, not just to heal themselves, but just to keep a decent level of health maintenance. How many people in America understand fitness, like, as a concept? Like five humans who live in America understand the concept of fitness, you know?
Yeah.
So many fad diets for losing weight that are, like, sickeningly unhealthy, and keto and gluten-free shit when you don't have that one disease that means you can't eat gluten, and blah, 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 blah. We just know so little about our bodies.
Yeah. I'm very against prayer healing, mostly because my grandmother tried that one on me when she found out I was trans, apparently. I didn't hear about this. She had been, like, doing, like, I don't know what kind of blood rituals they were doing at church, but apparently she'd been going to the priest about this and doing, like, the rosary or something.
Did it work? Are you cis now?
No, apparently not. It would have been nice, though. But, you know, she eventually, she saw me in person, I think last Thanksgiving, and she dropped the entire issue. I don't know why that did it for her, but she apparently told my parents, no, he's the happiest he's literally ever been, that I've ever seen him.
Well, that's sweet.
So,
okay, well, that's kind of a big W in the end, right?
Yeah. So, chat, if you just have staring contests with your boomer grandparents, and I think that will fix all of your problems, according to my personal experience. But
if only it were so easy all the time.
if only. I do have other people in the family who actually never had the chance to disown me, mostly because, according to, again, religion, I am technically a bastard because my mom isn't from the same sect of Catholicism my dad is. So they don't validate their marriage.
Huh.
And they haven't talked to us in, 25 years, I think. So fair and reasonable, things that people do.
Yeah, probably a lot of civic improvements we could make, a couple problems worth addressing, I'd say, in the long run for the health of this country. Whatever the case, I am happy that your grandmother eventually saw reason.
Yeah, took her a bit. I didn't hear about any of it while it was happening because I just don't talk to her much. She has quite a few grandchildren to be, concerning herself with, and,
Are you Latin? You alluded to Latin families earlier with the confidence of a person who isn't white and is unafraid of being canceled.
I am very white. I have the confidence of not being canceled because I'm trans. It's the ID poll, I think, balances out if you really think about it.
Oh, we can't all be so lucky.
I know. See, I think this is actually why chat has been trying to convince you that you're an egg, Vaush. They just want you to be canceled less. When you really think about it.
Oh God, I'd be unstoppable.
All right.
I do sincerely appreciate you coming on, even if this was not even close to a debate in form.
Yeah.
I'm still glad you came on. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And keep doing what you're doing, because I know you always use trans girls on the hypotheticals, but you have some trans guys who also appreciate what you do.
I know that. Yeah, it's just it just comes to mind more because, like, trans girls are always the issue that's focused on, and when I'm making conservatives angry or making a point, like, I don't know if conservatives know trans men exist, and then, like, I try to. I really do, but, like,
no, I'm messing with you. They're all over Twitter. I swear, it's insane. It's fine. The first thing that pops into my head when I think of trans people is trans girls too, and I'm not even one of them, so I don't know.
Yeah, they've definitely won the PR war on that one, but you know, inshallah, the kings will rise up
in
again.
some way. Anyways, thank you so much for having me on. And yeah, I guess I'll go back to chat.
Be
or
well,
go to bed. Actually,
and have
it's
fun down
3
there.
a.m. So.
Or that.
All right. Yeah. Thank you.
Take care. Well, that was nice. Grr, I hate positive conversations. Grr. There you go. Now I'm consistent.